The sterile corridors of the Soteria hummed with a subdued vibration, a gentle reminder of the ceaseless machinery that kept the hospital ship alive in the cold vacuum of space. Captain Jameson Trel gazed out the observatory's expansive viewport, watching a nebula swirl in distant hues of violet and indigo, the sight offering a rare moment of tranquility amidst the universe's vastness. "Captain, you'll want to see this," came a voice, crisp and tinged with urgency. Trel turned to see his chief engineer, Lukas Grieve, approaching. The man's brow was furrowed, his usual calm demeanor replaced by a sharp tenseness. He handed Trel a tablet displaying erratic sensor readings. "Something's approaching, fast and stealthy. Doesn't match any known commercial routes or military patrols," Lukas reported, his voice low, almost swallowed by the hum around them. Before Trel could respond, the ship shuddered violently, a harsh whine piercing through the usual thrum of the engines. The taste of adrenaline filled Trel's mouth as the lights flickered and dimmed. He steadied himself against the wall, his other hand instinctively reaching for the intercom. "All hands, brace for impact. Defensive protocols, now." His command echoed down the sterile halls where the scent of antiseptic was swiftly replaced by the sharp tang of electrical smoke. Chaos erupted as another tremor rocked the Soteria. Medical tools clattered to the floor, and the once steady hum of life support systems faltered into an erratic heartbeat. Nurses and medics scrambled, their voices a cacophony of orders and reassurances as they tended to bewildered patients. In the command center, Trel and Lukas watched in horror as the external cameras displayed a swarm of sleek dark vessels encircling the Soteria. They moved with predatory grace, their designs alien and menacing. "They're not just passing by, they're targeting us," Lukas muttered, his hands flying over the controls attempting to reroute power to the shields. "Why us? We're a medical ship." Trel's voice cracked with frustration as he stared at the tactical display, the enemy ships now visible as ominous red blips. "Maybe because we're a medical ship," Lukas replied grimly. "Easy target, high value." The ship shuddered again, a direct hit that sent a jolt through the deck, the sound of tearing metal, a visceral groan that resonated through the ship's frame. The air was suddenly thick with the acrid stench of burning circuits. Trel's heart raced as he issued orders, his mind racing with strategies and contingencies. But deep down, a gnawing fear took root, the fear of what could happen if they didn't survive this attack, or worse, if the attackers decided to board the ship. The Soteria was equipped for many things, but combat was not one of them. Its corridors, designed for the quick transport of the injured and ill, now felt like a labyrinthine trap. Trel felt the ship's vulnerability deep in his bones, a stark contrast to the solid, protective walls of his previous military postings. As the battle outside intensified, the internal struggles within the Soteria mirrored the external chaos. Crew members looked to Trel for guidance, their faces ghostly pale under the emergency lighting. Among them, Dr. Myles Harrow, the lead surgeon, his usually steady hands shaking as he approached Trel. "Jameson, we can't let them take the ship. There are hundreds of lives at stake here," Myles implored, his voice a desperate whisper that carried the weight of every soul aboard. "I know, Myles. We'll do what we must," Trel responded, his decision heavy with the unspoken acknowledgement that their actions today might change the fundamental nature of their mission. With a deep breath, Trel turned back to the crew, his voice resolute. "Prepare to initiate emergency combat protocols, Lukas. Get me everything you can on their tech. We need to find a weakness." The crew's response was immediate, a flurry of activity, as everyone rallied to defend their ship. Lukas nodded, his eyes scanning data streams for anything that might give them an edge. Outside, the stars watched silently as the Soteria, a vessel of healing now on the precipice of war, braced for the unknown, her halls echoing with the resolve of her crew. As the first retaliatory strikes were launched, the ship's metal skin groaned under the strain, a lament for the peace it once knew and the uncertain future it faced. As the Soteria's cannons fired in retaliation, the acrid scent of ozone filled the air, blending with the metallic tang of fear that hung palpable among the crew. Captain Jameson Trel stood firm at the helm, his gaze fixed on the hollow display, which painted a grim tableau of the encroaching enemy. Each blast from their adversaries seemed to shake the very soul of the ship, a monstrous symphony of war, clashing against the vessel's intended purpose of mercy. In the dim light of the command center, Lukas Grieve worked feverishly, his fingers a blur across the controls, seeking an advantage over their technologically superior foes. "I've managed to reroute auxiliary power to the shields, but it's a temporary measure at best," he reported, his voice steady despite the beads of sweat that dotted his forehead. The ship rocked violently under another hit, the sound of tearing metal sending a shiver through the crew. Dr. Myles Harrow steadied a tray of surgical instruments that clattered ominously, his face a mask of concentration. "We need to hold them off long enough to get the wounded to safety," he said, turning to Trel with a grave look. "Jameson, there's talk among the crew about what we're becoming in this fight." Trel met his gaze, the weight of command pressing down on him like the gravity of a neutron star. "I know, Myles, and when this is over, we'll have to face what we've done. But right now, our priority is to protect this ship and everyone on it." Outside, the dark void of space was alight with the fire of battle. The Soteria, a lone beacon amidst the chaos. As the enemy's tactics became increasingly aggressive, Trel felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. They were not merely defending anymore, they were fighting back, hard. It was a role reversal that sat uneasily with him, the lines between healer and warrior blurring with each passing moment. In the medical bay, the contrast was stark. The sterile white lights flickered as the power fluctuated, casting long shadows across the faces of the wounded. The air was thick with the smell of antiseptics and blood, the latter all too abundant. Nurses moved between the cots with a quiet urgency, their expressions tight with controlled panic as they administered painkillers and bandaged wounds. Amidst the chaos, a young medic named Eli Vance stood out. His hands moved with a deft precision that belied his years, soothing the injured with a calm that was both reassuring and poignant. "Hold on," he whispered to a young soldier, whose eyes were clouded with pain. "You're going to see home again." Back in the command center, Lukas pulled up a schematic of the enemy ships on his screen, his brow furrowed in concentration. "There's a pattern to their attacks, something repetitive we might exploit," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. Trel leaned over his shoulder, studying the display. The enemy ships were sleek and angular, like shards of dark crystal hurtling through space, each volley of their plasma cannons synchronized with chilling precision. "We need a plan, and fast," Trel murmured, his mind racing through possibilities. The realization that they might need to venture into morally gray areas to ensure their survival was a bitter pill to swallow. It was one thing to defend, another entirely to attack. Yet as captain, his first duty was to his crew and the lives entrusted to his care. He made his decision. "Lukas, prepare to execute a feint. Draw them into the nebula cluster. If we can disorient them with the gas clouds, we might have a chance to outmaneuver them." Lukas nodded, setting the coordinates with a grim determination. "It's risky, but it might just work." As the ship veered towards the nebula, the crew braced for the maneuver. The Soteria plunged into the dense gas clouds, the particles shimmering like a million tiny diamonds against the hull. For a moment, they were enveloped in an ethereal glow, a haunting beauty amidst the horror. Trel stood resolute, his eyes reflecting the nebula's ghostly light. The future was uncertain, the path they were on fraught with moral and ethical dilemmas. But in that instant, shrouded by the cosmos itself, the Soteria was neither just a hospital nor a warship. It was a vessel caught between the stars, navigating the shadowy divide between what was right and what was necessary. As they emerged from the other side of the nebula, the crew held their breath, waiting to see if their gambit had paid off. Trel's hand hovered over the console, ready to give the order that would either save them or seal their fate. The nebula's embrace had been a brief respite, a fleeting moment of otherworldly beauty in the stark reality of battle. As the Soteria slipped from the gas cloud's veil, the crew's eyes were fixed on the sensors, the silence of anticipation as palpable as the cold of space itself. Captain Jameson Trel watched the display, his jaw set as the murky outlines of their pursuers reappeared, momentarily disoriented by the nebula's dense gases. The ship shuddered slightly under his feet, a reminder of the damage sustained and the precariousness of their situation. Lukas Grieve's voice broke the silence, steady yet tinged with a barely concealed tension. "We've bought some time, but they're recalibrating quickly. We need to make our next move count." Trel nodded, the gears of strategy turning in his mind. "Prepare the EMP charges. It's time we turned their technology against them." On the lower decks, the engineering team moved with a quiet efficiency, the clatter of tools and the hiss of welding torches filling the air. Eli Vance, who had volunteered to assist, worked alongside the engineers, his previous calm now replaced with a focused determination. Each connection he secured, each bolt he tightened, was a silent testament to his resolve to protect the lives aboard. The smell of scorched metal hung heavy as they readied the EMP devices, the technology cobbled together from the remnants of their damaged systems and the ingenuity born of desperation. Eli wiped the sweat from his brow, leaving a streak of grease across his forehead. He glanced up as Dr. Myles Harrow approached, his presence a stark contrast to the mechanical chaos around him. "We're doing the right thing, aren't we, Myles?" Eli asked, his voice barely above a whisper over the din. Myles paused, his gaze lingering on the young medic turned temporary engineer. "We're doing the only thing we can, Eli. Sometimes that has to be enough." Back in the command center, Trel and Lukas monitored the approaching enemy ships, their forms growing clearer against the backdrop of stars. "Ready the EMPs," Trel commanded, his finger hovering over the launch button. The tension in the room was a tangible entity, every crew member holding their breath as the seconds ticked down. With a firm press, Trel unleashed the EMP charges, watching as they sped toward the enemy fleet, small comets of hope in the vast darkness. The result was immediate and gratifying. The lead ship's lights blinked out, followed by others, their deadly ballet interrupted by sudden, crippling silence. Cheers broke out across the command center, the relief a momentary balm to their weary spirits. But Trel remained focused, aware that the victory was temporary. "Maintain course and speed. Keep monitoring their systems. This isn't over yet." As the Soteria maneuvered through the debris of disabled ships, a new signal pinged on the radar, distinct and puzzling in its regularity. Lukas studied the anomaly, his brow creased. "There's something out there, not one of the enemy ships. It's different." Curiosity piqued, Trel peered over his shoulder. The signal was a mystery, its source hidden within the scattering field of the nebula they had just exited. Could it be another ship? Unknown. "But it's worth investigating," Lukas replied, his voice a mix of caution and intrigue. "It could be a civilian caught in the crossfire, or maybe a chance to find out who's really behind this attack," Trel finished, his mind racing with the possibilities. The decision was made. "Alter course. Let's find out what's hiding in the shadows." The Soteria turned, its engines humming softly as they approached the unknown signal. The ship was silent now, the earlier euphoria replaced by a collective breath held in suspense. As they drew closer, the outline of a ship began to emerge from the nebula's mist, its design unfamiliar and sleek, unlike anything they had encountered before. Trel stood at the observatory, his eyes not leaving the approaching vessel. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and anticipation, each crew member ready for whatever challenges this new encounter might bring. This ship held answers, perhaps to questions they hadn't yet thought to ask. The mysterious ship remained still, almost ethereal in its quiet. As the Soteria approached, its intentions unclear, the crew prepared for what might be a new chapter in their unexpected voyage into warfare, their senses sharpened for any sign of threat or alliance. The mystery deepened, pulling them inexorably toward the unknown, each heartbeat a drumbeat marching them closer to the hidden truths of the galaxy. The mysterious ship loomed ahead, its silhouette cutting a sharp contrast against the nebulous backdrop of the galaxy. As the Soteria drew closer, the other vessel's lights flickered on, bathing their deck in an eerie glow that shimmered off its metallic hull. The air inside the command center grew thick with anticipation, every crew member's breath held tight as they awaited Captain Jameson Trel's orders. "Open a channel," Trel commanded, his voice echoing slightly in the hushed atmosphere of the bridge. Lukas Grieve nodded, his fingers dancing over the controls with practiced ease, setting the communications array to life with a low hum. Static crackled through the speakers before a voice smooth and modulating filled the room. "Unidentified vessel, this is Captain Trel of the Soteria. Identify yourself and state your purpose," Trel said, his tone balanced between diplomacy and command. There was a pause, the silence stretching thin, before the reply came. "This is the Artemis. We mean no harm," responded a voice, cryptic yet oddly soothing. "We've been observing the conflict. It seems we have common adversaries." The crew exchanged looks of muted surprise and cautious relief. Trel's gaze hardened as he processed the information, aware of the potential implications. "What do you want with us?" he asked, his question cutting through the static-filled air like a knife. "We can offer assistance," the voice from the Artemis replied, now infused with a hint of urgency. "But we must meet in person to discuss the terms." Trel weighed his options, the metallic taste of suspicion lingering on his tongue. He glanced at Lukas, who gave a subtle nod, his expression unreadable yet trusting. "We'll prepare for your delegation. Dock at Airlock 3, Trel decided, signaling for Lukas to cut the transmission. As preparations began for the arrival of the Artemis delegation, the atmosphere aboard the Soteria shifted palpably. The crew moved with a renewed purpose, the lingering scent of burnt electronics, an antiseptic now underscored by a faint trace of something new, perhaps hope, or merely the adrenaline of uncertainty. Eli Vance, his medic's uniform slightly askew from the day's earlier exertions, stood beside Dr. Myles Harrow in the medical bay, stocking supplies and recalibrating equipment. "Do you trust them?" Eli asked, his voice barely above a whisper as he passed a scanner over a newly sealed medical kit. Myles considered the question, his eyes reflecting the soft glow of the medbay's monitors. "Trust is a luxury we might not afford right now, Eli. But we need allies, and sometimes that's enough to start with." In the docking bay, the air was cool and smelled faintly of oil and metal as the Artemis made its approach. The outer doors sealed with a hiss, and the inner chamber stood ready to receive the visitors. Trel and Lukas, along with a small security detail, awaited the delegation, their postures relaxed but alert. The airlock door opened with a soft thud, and 3 figures stepped into the Soteria. They were humanoid but distinct, their skin shimmering slightly under the overhead lights, their eyes bright and searching. The leader, a tall figure with a commanding aura, extended a hand to Trel. "I am Commander Lyra of the Artemis," she introduced, her voice carrying a melodious quality that resonated slightly with the ship's ambient hum. Trel took her hand, the contact brief but firm. "Captain Jameson Trel, let's talk about how you can help us." They moved to a conference room, the walls lined with screens displaying star maps and tactical data. As they settled around the table, Lyra spoke. "Your fight against the raiders has caught the attention of many in this sector. We too have suffered at their hands. An alliance could benefit us both." Trel listened, his senses tuned not only to her words but also to the subtle undertones of sincerity in her voice. The scent of the conference room's recycled air filled his nostrils, a reminder of the enclosed space in which they now placed their fragile trust. "Our assistance comes with knowledge," Lyra continued, tapping a device that projected images of the raiders' fleet movements and weak points. "We have been tracking them for months. Together we could push them back, prevent further attacks." The room was silent as the crew absorbed the information, the weight of the decision pressing down on them all. Trel looked around at his officers, their faces a mix of hope and resolve, then back at Lyra, whose presence seemed almost too fortuitous. "Let's discuss your terms," Trel said, his voice steady, the decision made more from necessity than desire. As they delved into the details, the mysterious Artemis and its crew slowly began to shed their enigma, revealing possibilities that Trel hadn't dared to consider before. Yet, as the meeting drew on, one question lingered in his mind, unspoken but heavy with implications. Why had the Artemis really chosen to help them? And what would be the true cost of this newfound alliance? In the aftermath of the alliance discussion, the corridors of the Soteria echoed with a subtle but perceptible change in atmosphere. Crew members whispered in hushed tones, their voices a low murmur against the constant hum of the ship's life support systems. The air was tinged with a mix of anticipation and apprehension, each breath carrying the weight of the unknown future they were steering toward. Captain Jameson Trel walked alongside Commander Lyra, her presence on the ship now a symbol of the tentative trust between two former strangers. Their footsteps were a soft patter against the metal floor, a stark contrast to the usual clanking and bustling as the ship's routines adjusted to accommodate their new allies. "The terms are agreed, then," Lyra confirmed, her voice resonating with a clarity that seemed to fill the space around them. "We'll share intelligence and coordinate strikes against the raiders. Your crew will have full access to our navigation tech." Trel nodded, his mind racing with the strategic implications. "And the tech transfer starts immediately?" "Yes, my engineers are ready to integrate our systems with yours. You'll find the enhancements enlightening," Lyra replied, her lips curling into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. As they rounded the corner toward the engineering deck, the scent of solder and fresh paint wafted through the air, signaling the ongoing repairs and upgrades. Lukas Grieve was already there, overseeing the integration process, his figure bent over a console, deep in conversation with an engineer from the Artemis. The soft glow of the screen illuminated their focused faces, casting long shadows on the wall behind them. "Lukas, how's it going?" Trel asked, his voice cutting through the low buzz of activity. Lukas looked up, wiping a bead of sweat from his forehead. "It's complex tech, but we're making headway. Their systems are years ahead of anything we've seen." Trel's gaze shifted to the Artemis crew working alongside his own, the melding of two crews a dance of cautious cooperation. He could almost taste the metallic tang of new possibilities in the air, mixed with the residual bitterness of past battles. Meanwhile, in the medical bay, Eli Vance continued his duties, the subtle shift in the ship's atmosphere not lost on him. As he administered care, his hands moved with a precision that belied the turmoil in his mind. The sterile smell of antiseptics was now a constant in his life, a reminder of the ever-present line between life and death they all walked. Dr. Myles Harrow approached, his steps silent on the soft flooring. "Eli, how are you holding up? This alliance has everyone on edge." Eli paused, placing a bandage on a patient's wound. "It's strange, isn't it? Yesterday we were alone in this fight. Today we might just have a chance to end it." Myles nodded, his eyes thoughtful. "Change is like medicine, Eli. Sometimes it's the taste that bothers us, not the effects." Back on the bridge, Trel and Lyra watched as their ships aligned in orbit, the Soteria and the Artemis now physically and metaphorically connected. The view from the viewport showed the two ships side by side, their hulls reflecting the starlight, a beacon of their newfound alliance. "Captain Trel, I must admit, your ship has a resilience that's quite unique," Lyra commented, her gaze fixed on the stars beyond. Trel offered a wry smile, his eyes mirroring the starlight. "We've had to be resilient, Commander. Space doesn't forgive easily." As the day shifted into night according to the ship's cycle, the crew of the Soteria settled into an uneasy routine. The integration of the Artemis technology continued, the hum of progress a constant backdrop to their thoughts. In his quarters, Trel stared out the viewport, the darkness of space a tapestry of light and shadow. The soft hum of the ship soothed his tired mind, but the weight of command remained, pressing down on him like the gravity of an unseen planet. He knew the alliance was a gamble, the outcomes uncertain. Yet, as he watched the stars, a sense of resolve settled over him. Whatever the future held, they would face it together, their course set by the combined strength of two crews, united by necessity. The mystery of what lay ahead was both a challenge and a promise. As the Soteria sailed through the cosmos, her path lit by the light of distant stars, the silence of space seemed to whisper secrets meant only for those brave enough to listen. As the first light of the distant suns filtered through the Soteria's viewport, casting elongated shadows across the command deck, Captain Jameson Trel, felt the weight of the pending operation press upon him. Today, their new alliance would face its first true test, a coordinated strike against the raiders using the combined technologies of both ships. Outside, the cosmos was eerily silent, the void punctuated only by the distant glitter of stars and the occasional flicker of asteroid debris reflecting the sun's light. Inside, however, the hum of activity filled the ship, the air charged with a mix of determination and the metallic scent of freshly welded panels, a testament to the ship's ongoing transformations. Lukas Grieve approached Trel, his footsteps nearly silent against the soft thrum of the engines. "All systems are green, Captain. The Artemis has synced their navigation tech with ours. We're as ready as we'll ever be." Trel nodded, his gaze fixed on the holomap displaying their strategic targets. "Once we engage, there's no turning back. Make sure everyone is prepared." In the medical bay, Eli Vance was doing exactly that. The room buzzed with a quiet intensity, the air cool and sterile, undercut by the faint smell of antiseptic. He checked and rechecked the medical supplies, ensuring everything was in place for any casualties. His hands moved methodically, the tactile sensation of sealed bandages and cold metal tools grounding him in the moment. Dr. Myles Harrow observed the preparations, his presence a calming force amid the storm of activity. "Remember, Eli, our job is to heal, no matter the circumstances. Keep focused on that." Eli nodded, his resolve firm. "We'll be ready, Doctor." Back on the bridge, Trel convened a final briefing with the command team, including Commander Lyra from the Artemis. "This strike isn't just about damaging their fleet. It's about sending a message. We're not just survivors. We're defenders now," he stated, his voice resolute. Lyra, standing beside him, added, "Our sensors have detected increased communications chatter among the raider ships. They know something's coming. Let's ensure they understand exactly what that is." As the fleet maneuvered into position, hidden by a small moon shadow, the tension was palpable. The crew's senses were heightened, the silence of anticipation stark against the usual background noise of ship operations. Every crew member was acutely aware of the humming of the ship beneath their feet, the taste of recycled air in their mouths, and the scent of oiled machinery. The first phase of the attack was stealth, slipping past the raiders' outer sensors. Trel watched the distance close on the monitors, the digital representation a stark reminder of the reality outside. "On my mark," he whispered, his finger poised over the command button. The Soteria and Artemis burst from the moon's shadow like specters at dawn, their cannons firing in unison, a brilliant display of coordinated technological might. The raiders, caught off guard, scrambled to respond, their ships lighting up the void with return fire. The battle was a dance of light and shadow, each explosion a drumbeat in the symphony of war. The Soteria, now more than just a hospital ship, maneuvered with a grace that belied her size, her strikes precise and deadly. Amidst the chaos, Trel remained focused, his senses fully engaged. He could feel the ship vibrating with each discharge of their cannons, the slight shift in air pressure every time they scored a hit. His ears rang with the cacophony of battle, a stark contrast to the quiet discussions and orders given on the bridge. The raiders began to falter, their formation breaking as the combined firepower of the Soteria and Artemis took its toll. Trel allowed himself a brief smile as he saw their lines collapse, but his celebration was cut short by an urgent report from Lukas. "Captain, we've got a problem," Lukas announced, his voice tense. "One of the raider ships is making a run for it. It looks like they're carrying something critical." Trel's eyes narrowed as he assessed the situation. "Intercept them. We can't let them escape. Not now." As the Soteria changed course to pursue the fleeing raider ship, the mystery of what they carried loomed large, a new puzzle piece in the complex game they were all playing. Trel felt the adrenaline surge through his veins, the uncertain outcome of this chase another layer in the ever-deepening saga of their journey through the stars. As the Soteria bore down on the fleeing raider ship, Captain Jameson Trel felt the palpable tension on the bridge tighten further, a tangible manifestation of the stakes at play. The raider vessel, desperate to escape, pushed its engines to the limit, the exhaust plumes of vibrant blue against the backdrop of the cold, dark cosmos. "Keep on them, Lukas," Trel ordered, his voice a steady command over the din of alert systems and status updates. Lukas Grieve's fingers danced across the control panel, coordinating with the Artemis to box in the raider and cut off any potential escape routes. In the tactical operations room, the air was thick with the electric scent of ozone generated by the overworked consoles. Screens displayed a myriad of data, trajectories, speed, and the ever-narrowing gap between the pursuer and pursued. Trel's eyes remained fixed on these, calculating the best moment for the strike. "Prepare to deploy the grappling drones," he instructed, his strategic mind mapping out the next moves like a grandmaster in a game of interstellar chess. "I want them disabled, not destroyed. We need to know what they're carrying." On his command, small metallic drones, no larger than a suitcase, launched from the Soteria, their silver bodies sleek against the star-studded sky. They raced toward the raider ship, fast and silent, their approach almost ghost-like. Meanwhile, in the engine room, the hum of machinery filled the space, a constant reminder of the raw power at the crew's disposal. Eli Vance, who had been tasked with monitoring the ship's energy output, watched the gauges closely. His responsibility weighed heavily on him, the balance of power in his hands a direct lifeline to the success of their mission. The drones made contact with the raider ship, attaching to its hull with magnetic grips. Within moments, they began their work, sending pulses of electromagnetic energy into the raider's systems, disrupting its operations. The ship's flight became erratic, its path beginning to spiral as its systems buckled under the assault. "Good hit," Trel acknowledged with a nod. "Lukas, bring us alongside. It's time to board." As the Soteria maneuvered into position, a team of specially trained security personnel assembled in the docking bay, their movements precise and deliberate. Among them was a young officer, Lieutenant Kara Thorne, her focus absolute as she checked her equipment one last time. Her senses were heightened, the smell of lubricant on her armor and the tangy taste of fear mingling on her tongue. The docking procedure was textbook, the Soteria forming a sealed connection with the raider's compromised vessel. The hiss of the airlock ceiling punctuated the silence that followed, a brief pause before the storm of boarding action. "Breaching in 3, 2, 1. Kara counted down, then led the charge into the raider ship. The air inside was stale, tinged with the acrid scent of burnt electronics and fear. The corridors were dim, emergency lights casting long shadows as the team moved forward, their weapons ready. As they cleared each section, Trel monitored their progress from the bridge, his ears filled with the crackle of their comm units, each report another piece of the unfolding tactical puzzle. The raider crew, few in number and clearly not expecting such a swift retaliation, were quickly subdued. Finally, in the cargo hold, the team discovered their prize, a series of sealed crates, marked with symbols that were unfamiliar but unmistakably important. Kara relayed the information back to Trel, her voice a mixture of excitement and wariness. "We've secured the cargo, Captain. Awaiting further instructions." Trel didn't hesitate. "Hold position. We're sending in the tech team to inspect. I want to know exactly what we're dealing with." As the tech specialists, led by Lukas, entered the raider ship, the bridge crew waited in a tense silence, the only sounds the soft beeping of the consoles and the distant hum of the engine. The wait felt interminable, each minute stretching out before them. Finally, Lukas's voice broke the silence. "Captain, you're going to want to see this for yourself." Curiosity piqued. Trel made his way to the raider ship, crossing the airlock with a sense of foreboding. The cargo hold was cold, the metallic walls echoing slightly as he entered. Lukas pointed to one of the crates, now open, revealing its contents, a device glowing with an internal light, intricate and clearly advanced. "It's a quantum entanglement communicator," Lukas explained. "Far beyond anything we've got. This could change the balance of power in the galaxy." Trel ran a hand over his chin, his mind racing with the implications. The device wasn't just valuable, it was a game changer. "This is why they were running," he murmured. "It's not just technology, it's a message, and we just intercepted it." As they secured the communicator and prepared to return to the Soteria, Trel felt the weight of their discovery settle around him. This was more than a successful mission. It was a step into a larger arena, one where the stakes were higher than they had ever imagined. With the device safely aboard, Trel looked out at the stars, their light steady and distant. The universe had just gotten a lot bigger, and as he pondered their next moves, he knew they were no longer just survivors or defenders. They were players on the galactic stage, and the game had truly begun. As the Soteria charted its course back toward Allied space, Captain Jameson Trel stood in the observatory, his eyes fixed on the stars that stretched infinitely before him. The quantum entanglement communicator they had seized was safely locked away, its potential to change the course of interstellar communication and warfare nearly palpable, even behind the reinforced storage unit. Trel felt the weight of command more acutely than ever. The victory against the Raiders a bitter reminder of the sacrifices required to maintain peace and security in a galaxy where threats loomed in every uncharted asteroid field. "Captain, the Council is ready for your report." Lukas Grieve's voice broke through the silence, bringing Trel back from his reverie. "Thank you, Lukas. I'll be there shortly," Trel replied, taking one last look at the cosmos that had been both a battlefield and a sanctuary for them. In the conference room, the atmosphere was charged with a palpable tension as the holographic images of the council members flickered to life. Trel stood at the head of the table, the quantum communicator on display behind him, its soft glow a stark contrast to the stark military decor of the room. "Ladies and gentlemen of the Council, as you are aware, our recent mission has not only prevented a significant threat, but has also brought into our possession a technology that could alter our strategic capabilities," Trel began, his voice steady, each word measured. He proceeded to detail the mission, the collaboration with the Artemis, and the skirmish with the Raiders. As he spoke, the images of the battle played behind him, ships darting through the darkness, the flash of cannon fire, the decisive deployment of the grappling drones. "But it is not the victory in battle that we must focus on," Trel continued, his gaze sweeping across the faces of the council members. "It is the implications of what we have found. This technology, this quantum communicator, represents a leap forward in our ability to coordinate across vast distances instantaneously." The council members murmured among themselves, the implications clear to all. With such technology, their fleet could respond to threats with unprecedented speed, their commanders always in perfect sync. However, Trel's next words brought a hush over the room. "But we must ask ourselves, at what cost? Our mission began as a response to aggression, a necessary defense of our people and our territory. Yet we now hold in our hands a power that could be perceived as a provocation. How we choose to use this technology will define not just our military strategy, but our philosophy as guardians of peace." The room fell silent, the weight of Trel's words settling like dust after a storm. It was Lieutenant Kara Thorne who broke the silence, her voice a calm counterpoint to the heavy atmosphere. "Captain, with all due respect, our enemies won't hesitate to use such technology against us. If we don't leverage this advantage, we risk more than our strategic position. We risk the safety of all our people." Trel nodded, acknowledging her point. "Indeed, Lieutenant, and that is the burden of command, to weigh the potential for security against the potential for escalation. But this council was not assembled to dominate through fear or strength alone. We are here to uphold a principle, that humanity stands not just for survival, but for a higher standard of conscience." He turned, his hand resting lightly on the communicator. "This device could connect us, or it could divide us. It could be a beacon of our technological prowess, or it could be a symbol of our willingness to wield power wisely. How we introduce this technology to the galaxy will speak volumes about who we are as a people." The council members nodded, their earlier reservations now giving way to a deeper understanding. The decision was made, not in the spirit of conquest, but with the intention of safeguarding a future where humanity did not just survive, but thrived. In the coming days, we will work on protocols for the use of this communicator. We will reach out to our allies, share what we have learned, and ensure that our use of this technology is transparent and just," Trel concluded, his voice imbued with a resolute calm. As the meeting adjourned, Trel felt the lingering stares of the council members, their expressions a mixture of respect and contemplation. He walked back to the observatory, the stars once again before him. The quantum communicator's glow seemed less ominous now, more a beacon of potential. The Soteria continued on her path, cutting through the cosmos with renewed purpose. Trel watched as the stars blurred into streaks of light, each one a distant world with its own stories, its own battles. And in that vast expanse, he saw not just challenges, but possibilities. Possibilities for diplomacy, for understanding, for a peace forged not in the shadows of warships, but in the light of cooperation. The Soteria, a ship born of necessity, a symbol of healing turned defender, now carried a new mantle, a harbinger of hope. As the credits of their journey rolled in his mind, Trel realized that the true strength of humanity lay not in the might of their weapons, but in the depth of their convictions. They had faced the darkness not with the blinding glare of armaments, but with the steady light of resolve. And somewhere, in the silent music of the galaxy, he knew that this was the essence of their humanity, the unyielding spirit that no star could outshine. The Soteria sailed onward, her journey a testament to the crisis of conscience that had found not a weapon, but a promise.